According to evolution theory, we were punched in the face so much as primates that natural selection had to invent a cushion to protect us from face punches. That is why in evolution we have beards as men.
How about no?
Hey everyone, JL here, and welcome back to Bridge the Divide, where I examine irrational beliefs, the irrational behaviors that often follow, and how we, with education, rationality, and reason, can bridge the societal divides that they create. Today, we're going to wrap up this series covering the blatant lies of the sentient bottle of kindergarten paste known as Matt Powell. We started with breaking down and debunking Matt's ridiculous biblical flood claims, and then moved on to his wanton misrepresentation of evolution and abiogenesis. And now, we're going to take a bit of a bumpy ride through his version of taxonomy and cosmology before we pull into the station for some much-needed relief. So let's dive in and we'll get this demolition underway.
Since we supposedly evolved from chimps and chimps do not have beards, but humans do, the burden of proof is on the evolutionist to explain how we evolved beards.
Matt can't seem to go 5 words without telling a lie. We know it's a lie because this has been spelled out for him so many times you'd think he was a script spelling bee judge. But just in case he watches this, let's break this down as simply as we can. 1. Humans did not evolve from chimpanzees or any other modern extant primate. That claim would be impossible because that's not how evolution works. 2. Humans, or Homo sapiens, while occupying their own specific genus, Homo, with about a dozen other now extinct members, do share the taxonomic family Hominidae with 3 other genera: Pongo, which includes orangutans, Pan, which includes chimps and bonobos, and Gorilla, which is fairly obvious. 3. The taxonomic family of Hominidae all shared a common ancestor that lived roughly 15 to 13 million years ago. Now, after that initial lie, Matt then goes on to strangely reference the existence of facial hair in humans, specifically beards. So, since we know that his starting point was dishonest, it entails that his incredulity regarding the lack of human-like beards in chimps is also dishonest. And while we will get to the very easily found explanation for why human beards evolved the way they did, I really want to hear what Matt has to say about them.
According to evolution theory, we were punched in the face so much as primates that natural selection had to invent a cushion to protect us.
Alright, I have to admit, I was kind of taken aback by the sheer ridiculousness of Matt's claim here. Just as I imagine his audience would be as well. I mean, that's his whole grift, to sound as ridiculous as humanly possible, so that his audience, who we know will generally refuse to look any further into his claims, come away from his spiel thinking atheists are equally as ridiculous. So, of course, being aware of this, I had to look into the claim. And it was actually pretty easy to find where he got it. I found Matt's starting point in this 2012 article from Reader's Digest. Buried within that article, there is a link that takes you to a History of Beards infographic over at the Huffington Post. And buried in that article is a link to a behavioral ecology journal article that covers the source and varied purposes of the male beard. And deep within that article is where we find the source of Matt's claim. Now, in 2010, an article was published examining some of the proposed functional similarities between the human male beard and the manes of male lions. That article proposed that the mane of the male lion may have evolved as a form of protection from combat with other males. So, it was extrapolated from there that the human beard may have done the same. That hypothesis is what informed the article that Matt is currently citing. And there's a little bit of scientific backing, as limited forensic studies have shown that the presence of a full beard can reduce impact potential of a strike to the face. However, peer review of that original article and continuing studies of the attack patterns of male lions on each other have completely dispelled this hypothesis, which of course was something that Matt conveniently failed to mention.
From face punches. That is why in evolution we have beards as men.
Nope, sorry Matt, you are caught in yet another lie. The prevailing conclusion based upon the evidence at hand is that two things led to the prevalence of beards in humans. One was a mutation in the androgen receptor gene that led to androgen sensitivity in human males, leading to stronger facial hair development during puberty. And two, the evolutionary pressure of sexual selection. So, similar to the tens of thousands of other species on this planet that choose their mates based upon outward appearances, the presence of a full strong beard in human males became an indicator of maturity, strength, and wisdom in many human cultures. While variations in the LNX1 gene on chromosome 4 influence how thick or sparsely facial hair grows, the ability to grow facial hair that looks different from chimpanzees is just the result of a random simple mutation. And of course, Matt mentions chimpanzees specifically because of our noted genetic relationship to them, all while simultaneously ignoring the fact that facial hair is significantly presented throughout the entire order of primates to whom we are all connected.
These are some of the craziest things that anyone could possibly buy into.
You are correct, Matt. They are crazy. Which is why no scientist or atheist believes them.
But like I said, the supposed skeptics of America, the skeptics that are so critically analytical of everything that they've ever observed,
Matt has never actually addressed exactly why we are critically analytical of all the things that we learn and hear. To answer that for him, it's because we are interested in knowing more true things than false things. This ensures a reduction in our personal ignorance, which by extension reduces the possibility that we can be taken advantage of by these charlatans and grifters who prey upon human ignorance. Like, for example, Matt and Hovind.
are willing to just believe this with no question.
Nope, this is just another lie, fully intended to denigrate the individuals who continuously demonstrate just how much of a predatory grifter Matt is.
I mean, I don't mean you came from monkeys. I mean, I can prove that you are a monkey.
While a lot of people will be quick to point out that specifically we humans are members of the family Hominidae, or the great apes, taxonomically speaking, humans are members of the primate order, which includes all simians, monkeys, and apes. But I'm really just nitpicking here. I totally understand what Aaron Ra is doing in that conversation.
I didn't believe you, Matt. Honestly, when you just said that, because I never heard this before, I was like, no one believes this. No one in the right mind. So I Googled it. I mean, can you believe this?
It would appear that Paul Wittenberger and Matt are both ignoring some pretty obvious red flags in that article they're citing. First, the fact that the headline is a question. Second, the word could in the subheading. And if you were to actually dive into that article, it doesn't actually address what Paul and Matt are asserting it does. In fact, this article came out days after the one they're citing that breaks down exactly why that article was misleading. The link to that is in the description.
This is really what they believe? This is crazy.
Yeah, which is why we don't believe it. And it's why I made this video to explain and demonstrate how extremist fundamentalists make a profit by misrepresenting atheism and naturalism.
You would think that somebody who is actually skeptical, somebody who actually is a free thinker, would look into that and say, that's insane.
Yeah, I did. Hence this video.
And in fact, when I interviewed people on the street and asked them what they thought of this theory, all of them came back and said, it's crazy.
Whoa, Matt. Who exactly did you interview? What were their education levels? How did you present the questions to them? Did you ensure that your inherent bias and intellectual dishonesty didn't color the questions? And how do we know you're even telling the truth regarding their responses? How do we know that their responses weren't prepared in advance? These, of course, are basic questions that go to Matt's journalistic credibility that he himself will never address.
The only one who didn't was an atheist, of course.
What atheist? Who were they? How long have they been an atheist? What was the evidence that convinced them otherwise? As often as it's been demonstrated that Matt lies his ass off regarding his representation of science, he has, in effect, destroyed all of his credibility when it comes to any journalistic claims he makes. Sorry, Matt, you did that to yourself. From this point in the video, Matt goes on to show some clips of his various interactions with other people. And it must be pointed out that there are some suspect edits throughout them. And he doesn't show exactly how he presented that question to many of the individuals. So given that we cannot eliminate the possibility of presentation bias, we cannot eliminate the possibility that Matt knows all of these individuals personally and that their responses were scripted, and we can absolutely verify Matt's prior history of dishonesty and misrepresentation, we are then forced forced to dismiss all of these clips as evidence of anything Matt says until he provides the missing details that can validate their credibility. And finally, to wrap up this little series looking at the lies of Matt Powell, we are jumping directly into a video where he thinks that he can debunk Big Bang cosmology in less than a minute.
Folks, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
That would be a positive claim. I would then ask Matt to present his evidence if he could without committing any of these logical fallacies.
It's much more powerful. It is much more scientific.
No, it actually isn't. Because God did it doesn't actually explain anything. It provides no explanation for the mechanistic relationship, we can't use it to make any predictions about anything in reality, and it actually stops further inquiry. Something, as a matter of fact, that Christians seem to be really into. And when presented with the next logical question, what made God so that God could make everything, the response is nothing made God, which is just special pleading. So, God did it is actually the most unscientific thing that can be said in response to any scientific inquiry.
Then, in the beginning, an explosion from an infinitely dense hot point created time, space, and nature and everything that we see today.
Not an explosion, an expansion. It's a difference Matt still can't seem to wrap his head around. But at least he didn't claim it was an explosion from nothing this time, meaning he's finally accepted that atheists don't believe in the logical contradiction of something from nothing. This of course only backs up the prior observation that his epistemology is broken and his approach to evidence is entirely subjective. And no, everything we see today is just a result of natural process.
Remember, according to them, all of the stars, planets, galaxies, and oceans, everything that we see in the universe would have had to have been compacted down into an infinitely dense hot point.
Everything that currently exists didn't just pop out of the expansion event looking like it does now. I think Matt said this as a nod to his young Earth creationism. But since the age of the Earth has been independently verified and is a well-established fact, we can dismiss this outright as just more intellectual dishonesty. And that entire lineage of formation that Matt was talking about is fully explained in Big Bang cosmology. So I'm not sure how he thinks this debunks it, unless his goal is to actually misrepresent what Big Bang cosmology actually is, so that he can just turn around and debunk his own lie.
And if this infinitely dense hot point exploded,
Expansion.
it would only shoot out smaller particles than what was contained in the center.
Incorrect. It was an expansion, which means the particles expanded outward. Similar to a balloon inflating, the particles expand outward from the center and further away from one another.
Think about it. If you have an explosion from a center point, all you have is little pieces of whatever exploded flying off.
Which is decidedly not Big Bang cosmology.
But according to them, these pieces of energy...
I'm sorry, pieces of energy?
I'll make that up.
It's very fascinating.
somehow formed into matter. They morphed themselves into planets, stars, oceans, galaxies.
All of that is explained in Big Bang cosmology, from the formation of basic elements, through the radiation era and the era of matter domination, to the birth of stars and galaxies some 300 million years after the initial expansion. I would normally say that this was just an argument from incredulity, but because Matt is deliberately misrepresenting the explanatory model so that he can then debunk his own misrepresentation, I have to conclude that this is all a deliberate lie.
Goo to the zoo to you and I. I mean, it is just crazy.
And of course, he just wraps it up by calling his own lie crazy. And that's because it is in fact crazy. It's crazy because the evidence shows that's not how it happened. And it's really crazy because Matt knows that his followers won't look up any of this information, because they've been indoctrinated not to question the Bible. Matt also knows that because that indoctrination runs so deep, that because it spans generations, and that his general audience doesn't really have access to the same level of education that most of the nation does, so long as these things don't change, he will always have an audience to grift. But hopefully, with more and more people calling Matt and Hovind out on their blatant dishonesty, we can get their victims away from them and eventually shut these predatory charlatans down. It's an event I hope to be at in the future so that I can be the one to throw that first aluminum siding dinosaur Hovind built right into the shredder. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please like, share, and subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. And be sure to leave a comment below. I love reading your responses, and those interactions help with the dreaded algorithm. Don't forget, November is Homeless Youth Awareness Month. A link on how you can support those efforts is down in the description. And if you love scary movies, be sure to check out me and my filmmaker friends over at the Week in Horror podcast, now in our 4th season. Everything you need to become a channel member here, get yourself some official Bridge the Divide swag, or support the podcast is down in the description below. Once again, thank you all so much for your continued support. And as always, be safe, be excellent to each other. And together, we can bridge the divide.